Hello everybody, welcome back to Bookmas. I am so excited today to talk to you about the best 5 translated fiction books I read in 2023. I absolutely love translated fiction, so I cannot wait to tell you about the best of the best. But before I do, let's roll the Bookmas intro. So the first book that I have to talk to you about today is Whale. This came onto my radar, as it did a lot of other people's, through the International Booker 2023, and it was my favourite book from that list this year. This is a story following Gumbok and her daughter Chunwi as they move from the coast to the urban areas to the rural mountainside of Korea, and it really tracks their lives together and also the history of Korea itself. There's a great mirroring that's happening there between those two things. Both women are incredibly entrepreneurial, but especially Gumbok, the mother. Everything she turns her hand to seems to become a success. But the both of them go through their fair share of struggle and hardship, as well as the successes and the friendships that they meet along the way. And so ultimately you're spending a lot of time with characters that it is really easy to love and get invested in as they learn to survive as women. But also the metaphor of the whale comes into play when Gumbok transforms from a woman to a man as she enters the belly of the whale. Literally the shape of the movie theatre that she builds is in the shape of a whale, and that is, she goes into the belly of the whale, very much referencing the classic that we all know, Moby Dick. She goes into the whale, and the whale is kind of an escape too, because she's escaping, I guess, what it means to be a woman at the time in Korea and the various things that happen to her as a result of her gender, and then comes out of the whale a man. Obviously she has been transformed, it's magical realism, and she then has all of the luxuries and privileges, and also then the downfalls of being a man. She takes a wife, and there are other things as well that I don't want to get into too much, but it's not all rosy when she becomes a man either. Despite being written in 2004, this still feels relevant to today and still feels important in the zeitgeist universally, not just as a piece of Korean fiction. It's taking hold of those universal themes that we find in storytelling, classic storytelling, themes like David versus Goliath, containment to liberation, and immaturity to maturity. All of those themes are played with to some degrees, and those are the themes that you find in the most successful novels, arguably. This is a satire. It takes magical realism and uses it to exaggerate its themes through grotesque and sometimes sexual imagery. And because of this really did feel like a breath of fresh air in my reading. It was a 5-star novel throughout. It gave me that 5-star feeling as I was reading it, and ultimately I cannot recommend this highly enough. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is The City of the Living by Nicola Lagiola. This is based off of a true crime that happened in the city of Rome. And at the time, this was a story that rocked Rome to its core, because it is basically the story of 2 men hiring a third man as a male prostitute for the night and then killing him. This novel is absolutely amazing and evoking the sense of Rome. You really feel like you are in the streets of Rome. The streets of Rome are not only described beautifully, but also the architecture. This is clearly an author who loves Rome, and he is able to capture it in words that make you feel as if you've been, which I think is a feat in itself, to be able to capture a place so accurately and so authentically. This is exploring the spectrum of sexuality in that we have 3 men who are engaging in male sex, but only one of them identifies as a homosexual. We have Manuel, who is a heterosexual, he would claim, because he only engages in homosexual acts as the top, which I will not explain any further. And then you have Marco, who is the out homosexual, if you like. He is very open with his homosexuality, and he also enjoys dressing up as a woman occasionally. Then you have Luca, who again claims to be heterosexual. He is working as a male prostitute for men, solely for men, because he is a student and is looking for another way to pay his bills. He has a girlfriend who does not know about this, and he does not see it as cheating on his girlfriend because he is not cheating on her with women, and so he sees it as almost entirely in a different realm, which is an interesting perspective to read from as well. So the story drops us in the backstory of these three characters. We find out a little bit about them before the murder takes place. We work up to the main event, which is the night of the murder and what transpires during that time. And then we also look at the aftermath of that crime. And a really powerful part of the narrative was when we had a parallel confession going on between Marco and Manuel. And you were seeing their police statements literally at the same time, and so you could see the discrepancies going on. All in all, that was a really effective way of telling this story. I had never seen that in a novel before, written down. I'd seen it maybe in a TV show, but to actually see that written down on the page and for it to be so clear and so effective in them undermining each other and seeing who was lying and who was telling the truth, it was just magnificent. And I will remember that book for that final third, where that was just so intelligently designed. So we have really interesting topics being discussed in this book, from sexuality in men and also in the environment of Catholic Rome, as well as the class divide and the socio-economics that result in something like this occurring. Next up on this translated list, I am going to tell you about The Possessed. And I read this as part of Wit Month in August, as whilst this is written by a man, it is translated by a woman. In fact, it is translated by none other than Antonia Lloyd-Jones, who has also translated another piece of Polish fiction, one of my favourites actually, by Olga Tokarczuk, which is called Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead. Antonia is an absolutely fantastic translator, and I feel like she has a really unique style. I feel like I could read a piece of translated fiction and almost know that she had translated it by the flavour of it, the identity that she has. It's very quirky, it's very satirical. Maybe she just chooses certain Polish novels to translate that fit her style, but I feel like she really then has a very distinct style, and I absolutely love that. Her authorial voice has a really darkly comic, playful wit about it, which I really enjoy. And both The Possessed and Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead both can be found in that modern Polish Gothic thriller category, which I absolutely am enjoying so much over the last couple of years. The Possessed will be out in March 2024, I believe, being published by Fitzcarraldo, so definitely put it on your TBRs for then. I just got an advanced reader copy of it, which is why I could read it sooner. So what is this about? This is about a young tennis coach who goes out to the Polish countryside to train a promising young up-and-coming female tennis player called Maya, who is from a very bourgeois family, and so he is moved into their country estate, if you like, and a love-hate relationship builds up between Maya and her new tennis coach. He also becomes embroiled in the fantastical happenings that are happening in the nearby dilapidated castle. And so this has all of the comedic elements of a Jane Austen novel, combined with a Mad Hatter in a haunted castle, combined with murder and seances and rescuing fair maidens from castles. It is downright ridiculous at times, but it certainly is a romp through the Polish countryside that I thoroughly enjoyed. Not to mention that because it's being published by Fitzcarraldo, I feel like that is a stamp of great writing quality. I can always rely on them for publishing work that has been written fantastically, at least the writing that I enjoy to read, and so this also was just a winner all round. Next up, I would love to tell you about Body Kinsui, which was written by a Bosnian woman, and this is a health memoir following this woman as she goes through a breast cancer trial. Now, human beings very often use dark humour to deal with very traumatic events and times in life, and Bosnia is clearly no different, because dark humour, wit, satire is at the heart of this health memoir. This woman questions whether she wants to keep on living. What is life without your tits is another great example of this sort of dark humour that is underlying as she has to undergo a double mastectomy. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it was incredibly confronting. It was very harsh to see a body that looks similar to yours go through very traumatic, brutal medical procedures, and the fear that was palpable through the writing. This was brilliantly told. We were in the second person, using that you form, so it really did hit very close to home, because you are in the head of this author, this writer, as she is going through an incredibly harsh, just unbelievably awful moment in her life. For anyone who doesn't know, the title Body Kintsugi is referring to the Japanese art form of kintsugi, where you take a broken pottery, stick it back together again, and then paint the cracks of the vase or whatever you have kind of reformed. And it obviously doesn't take a genius to work out why this would be a great metaphor for a woman who has just had a double mastectomy. Last up in this translated fiction best of the year is a book called Freshwater for Flowers by Valerie Perrin. I spoke about this book in my contemporary fiction best books of the year video that I released very recently. I think it was only last week. So I am going to leave this for you as the next video to watch, where you can hear my thoughts on this wonderful piece of translated fiction, as well as my thoughts on the other best contemporary books I read this year. And I shall see you very soon in my next video, guys. Thanks for watching.